The Baghdad Battery, clay jars from ancient Iraq that may have produced electricity long before Benjamin Franklin. In the desert heart of ancient Mesopotamia, modern-day Iraq, an unassuming cluster of artifacts rests in quiet museum glass. At first glance, they look ordinary, small clay jars, about the size of a man's hand, each sealed with asphalt and fitted with a copper cylinder and an iron rod. Their discovery in the 1930s by German archaeologist Wilhelm Koenig seemed almost trivial, another entry in the endless catalogue of antiquity. But the deeper he looked, the more impossible the objects appeared. Because if Koenig was right, these 2,000-year-old jars weren't just containers. They were batteries. The site was Kujut Rabu, near Baghdad, and the artifacts dated roughly to the Parthian or Sasanian period, between 250 BCE and 250 CE. Koenig noticed the corrosion on the iron rods resembled what happens during an electrochemical reaction, the same process that powers modern batteries. He proposed that when filled with an acidic liquid, perhaps vinegar or fermented grape juice, the jars could generate a mild electrical current. It sounded absurd, yet it worked. When modern scientists replicated the jars, the results were startling. Using the same materials, copper, iron, clay, and vinegar, they produced around 1 volt per jar. Small, but undeniably electricity. The question wasn't could they produce power. It was why would anyone 2,000 years ago want to? Some suggest the Baghdad Battery might have been used for electroplating, coating small objects in gold or silver. Ancient craftsmen, after all, possessed metalsmithing skill we still marvel at. Others imagine a more symbolic use, perhaps ritualistic, tiny sparks as proof of divine presence, a tool for priests to impress or frighten. Fringe theorists, as always, travel further. They claim it was evidence of lost technological lineage, knowledge inherited from an older civilization or given by visitors from beyond. These same theories often link the jars to similar artifacts in Egypt and Persia, seeing in them the faint pulse of a forgotten electric age. But mainstream archaeology remains cautious. Critics argue that without clear evidence, wires, connectors, or written instruction, the jars were likely storage vessels, not power sources. Some even suggest they were used for holding sacred scrolls or medicinal mixtures, and the electrical effect is merely coincidence. Yet the corrosion patterns, the materials, the fit of copper within clay, none of it quite fits a purely mundane explanation. Something about the Baghdad Battery refuses to die quietly in skepticism. Scholars still debate whether these devices were deliberate electrochemical tools or accidents of design. What's undeniable is their allure, a reminder that technology is not always a linear progression. Our ancestors may have stumbled upon secrets they themselves couldn't fully grasp, flashes of insight lost in the sands of time. If they were indeed primitive batteries, imagine the implication: electricity, tamed in the ancient world, long before Volta, Edison, or Franklin ever drew their first spark. In a sense, the Baghdad Battery is both humbling and haunting. It whispers that innovation isn't ours alone, it belongs to the deep current of human curiosity that runs unbroken through history. We've always been trying to capture light in our hands, to make the invisible visible. Somewhere in ancient Mesopotamia, a craftsman once poured vinegar into clay and watched the faint shimmer of possibility glow in the dark. He might not have known it was electricity. But he knew it was power. And thousands of years later, we're still trying to understand what he truly held. The Antikythera Mechanism, a corroded bronze device pulled from the sea that behaves like a 2,000-year-old computer. In the deep blue stillness off the Greek island of Antikythera, time itself lay waiting. In 1901, sponge divers searching for sea sponges instead found a shipwreck, a cargo vessel from the 1st century BCE, resting nearly 150 feet below the surface. Inside, buried beneath centuries of coral and silence, they found marble statues, amphorae, and a small, greenish lump of corroded bronze no larger than a shoebox. It looked like nothing more than an encrusted gear. But when it was brought to the surface, cleaned, and finally X-rayed decades later, the world realized what it truly was. A machine that shouldn't exist. Today we call it the Antikythera Mechanism, And it is, by all accounts, the world's first known analog computer, a device of impossible precision built over 2,000 years ago. When researchers first studied it, they were stunned to discover a network of over 30 interlocking bronze gears, each hand-cut with microscopic accuracy. Turning one gear moved others, synchronizing dials that could predict the positions of the sun, moon, and planets, and even the timing of solar and lunar eclipses. Some markings corresponded to the Metonic cycle, a 19-year astronomical period still used to regulate calendars today. How could such complexity exist in the ancient world? The Greeks of that age were master mathematicians, but there was no record, no hint, that they possessed gear systems capable of such intricate motion. Nothing like the Antikythera mechanism would appear again in history until over a millennium later, when medieval clockmakers began their work. It was as if a fragment of the future had fallen into the past. Some historians believe the device was created by a follower of Archimedes or Hipparchus, the great astronomer of Rhodes, who mapped the heavens with stunning accuracy. The mechanism, they argue, was a product of their genius, a teaching tool, a celestial calendar, or perhaps a navigation instrument used by sailors to align themselves with the gods. Yet others whisper of stranger origins. There are legends that claim such devices existed in the Library of Alexandria, crafted by scholars whose works were lost in flame. Others suggest it was part of a series, many machines, not one, each built to chart the skies and harness cosmic order. If so, then the Antikythera mechanism is not a miracle, but a survivor. In 2021, modern scientists finally reconstructed a full digital model using 3D X-ray scans. They discovered the mechanism displayed not only the moon's phases but its uneven orbit, requiring a sophisticated understanding of astronomy centuries ahead of its time. The gears even simulate retrograde planetary motion, how planets appear to move backward across the sky, a feat of both mathematical and mechanical brilliance. And yet, for all our understanding, something remains beyond reach. Who built it? Where did they learn such knowledge? And why, after this marvel, did the technology vanish? Scholars still debate whether it was a lone invention or part of a larger tradition erased by war and loss. Perhaps the collapse of ancient Greece buried not just empires but entire realms of knowledge. To stand before the Antikythera mechanism today is to feel the heartbeat of ancient genius pulsing through bronze and corrosion. Its gears still turn, quietly, conceptually, mapping the heavens as they did for minds long gone. It's not merely a machine. It's a message, one rusted cog at a time, from a civilization that once looked to the stars and saw not mystery, but method. And maybe, as we decode its secrets, we're not discovering how advanced they were, but how much we've forgotten. The pyramid's hidden engineering, monumental precision in stone that modern builders still struggle to replicate. Under the relentless Egyptian sun, the Great Pyramid of Giza rises with a silence that feels almost sentient. It has watched 4,000 years pass, empires rise and fall, sand reclaims cities, and stars shift in the heavens, yet its edges still align nearly perfectly with true north. Even now, the precision of its structure humbles modern engineers. Built around 2560 BCE for Pharaoh Khufu, the Great Pyramid was the tallest man-made structure on Earth for nearly 4,000 years. Composed of roughly 2.3 million limestone and granite blocks, some weighing over 80 tons, it's an architectural riddle wrapped in layers of lost technology. How was it built? That question has haunted both scientists and dreamers for centuries. The tools and methods known to the Egyptians, copper chisels, wooden sledges, ropes, seem far too primitive for such scale and accuracy. The blocks were transported across deserts, stacked with tolerances so tight that even a human hair can't fit between them. And all this achieved without cranes, wheels, or steel. The official explanation involves massive labor forces, ramps, and ingenious engineering. Archaeologists point to remnants of causeways and workers' villages that prove an organized workforce, not slave labor, but skilled artisans guided by mathematics and astronomy. The ramp theory suggests that blocks were dragged up enormous slopes lubricated with water or oil, reducing friction. Yet, the logistics remain staggering. To build it in 20 years, as records claim, workers would have had to set one stone every 2 minutes, day and night. Even modern cranes, under such pressure, would strain. So, the mystery persists. Did the Egyptians know something we don't? Enter the fringe theories, ideas that straddle the line between wonder and impossibility. Some claim sound or vibration-based levitation, others suggest advanced lost tools made from copper hardened by unknown processes. A few go further, whispering of ancient energy networks, that the pyramids' chambers, shafts, and geometry were designed not for burial but for power. In the late 20th century, scientists noted that the pyramid's internal design focuses energy at its core. Its dimensions encode mathematical constants like pi and the golden ratio with uncanny accuracy. Coincidence? Or intention? Scholars still debate whether these alignments were spiritual, mathematical, or something else entirely. One peculiar detail: the Great Pyramid sits at the geographical center of all Earth's landmass. No other point on Earth aligns so perfectly. Was that luck, or a cosmic map etched into stone? The deeper you look, the more impossible it becomes to dismiss the genius behind it. The internal shafts align with specific stars, Orion's belt, Sirius, celestial symbols of rebirth in Egyptian mythology. This wasn't merely construction, it was a dialogue with the heavens. Some modern engineers, when tasked to replicate even a smaller version with ancient methods, have failed. The precision cuts in granite, achievable today only with diamond-tipped tools, suggest techniques beyond copper chisels. And yet, the Egyptians left no blueprints, no formulas, no records of the process. Just the result, an eternal mountain of meaning, unyielding to time. To walk within the pyramid's corridors is to feel the hum of ancient intellect. The walls seem to breathe geometry. Every block feels deliberate, as though placed by a mind that saw both earth and sky as part of the same equation. Maybe that's the real secret, not technology lost, but understanding forgotten. They didn't build with machines, they built with purpose. Scholars still debate whether the Great Pyramid was purely a tomb or a multi-layered structure of spiritual, astronomical, and energetic significance. But one truth endures. It remains humanity's loudest whisper from the deep past, a monument that refuses to be fully understood. And perhaps, that's exactly what it was meant to be. The ancient Indian Vimanas, descriptions of flying machines in Sanskrit texts that sound eerily like aircraft. Long before the Wright brothers dared to touch the sky, India's ancient poets and sages had already imagined, or perhaps remembered, something astonishing. In the shimmering verses of the Mahabharata, the Ramayana, and a handful of Vedic texts lies the recurring image of the Vimana, a flying chariot, a celestial palace, a weapon of fire and wind capable of crossing heavens. To some, these are poetry. To others, they sound suspiciously like technology. The Sanskrit word Vimana roughly translates to, that which is measured out, but within context, it becomes far more elaborate. The Ramayana describes the Vimana of Ravana, the demon king of Lanka, as a gleaming aerial craft capable of moving in any direction at will. It could ascend, hover, and descend, like a helicopter, and was powered by mercury engines that hissed and shone like lightning. The descriptions are so detailed, they border on technical manuals. One later text, the Samarangana Sutratara, written around the 11th century, devotes entire chapters to the mechanics of flight, listing metals, fuels, and even the aerodynamics of propulsion. The treatise mentions mercury, electricity, and fire chambers, language so anachronistic it feels like science fiction. And yet, these words are centuries old. Mainstream scholars interpret Vimanas as mythological, metaphors for divine mobility or spiritual ascension. They point to the poetic nature of Sanskrit, where fire and light often symbolize power or knowledge. The Vimana, they argue, was never a machine but a symbol of transcendence. But the details won't go quietly. In the Mahabharata, the hero Arjuna ascends in a shining craft that emits a sound like thunder. The weapon he wields from above is a Brahmastra, which shone like 1,000 suns, and laid waste to the land, a description eerily reminiscent of an atomic blast. Ancient astronaut theorists, ever fascinated, seize on such lines as evidence of lost technology, or even extraterrestrial contact. There are also physical traces that feed the myth. In Rajasthan, layers of ancient desert soil bear radiation levels far above normal, as if scorched by something unnatural long ago. The ruins of Mohenjo-daro, some claim, show signs of heat so intense it fused stone to glass. While most geologists attribute this to natural events, lightning strikes or chemical reactions, the parallels with the Vimana wars of legend are hard to ignore. Still, evidence is not proof. No relic of an ancient aircraft has ever been found, no engine of Mercury uncovered in ruins. The texts remain our only record, tantalizing, ambiguous, and poetic. Scholars still debate whether these flying machines were literal inventions, symbolic metaphors, or cultural echoes of real phenomena witnessed by ancient eyes. Yet, one can't help but wonder. Human imagination tends to follow experience. We dream what we've seen, or what we've nearly touched. For ancient authors to describe flight, with mechanical precision and emotional awe, suggests they were reaching for something just beyond memory. Perhaps Vimanas were not aircraft as we know them, but the mythic translation of lost technology, fragments of memory carried across civilizations. Or perhaps they were visions, metaphors for inner flight, journeys of consciousness before aviation ever existed. Either way, their presence in these texts speaks to a timeless human longing, the desire to rise above the earth, to see as the gods see. When you read of those shining ships streaking across Vedic skies, you feel it, the pulse of wonder that beats in all of us. The same pulse that drove us to build rockets, to touch the moon, to explore the stars. Maybe we're not inventing flight after all. Maybe we're just remembering it. Roman concrete secrets, structures that have endured millennia thanks to a lost chemical formula modern science only recently began to grasp. The Roman Empire may have fallen, but its buildings have not. Across the Mediterranean basin, under modern cities and vineyards, the bones of Rome still stand, arches, aqueducts, domes, and seawalls that have endured 2,000 years of storms, quakes, and wars. The Pantheon, with its massive concrete dome, remains the world's largest unreinforced concrete structure. The question that has puzzled engineers for centuries is simple: how? Modern concrete crumbles within decades, sometimes in as little as 50 years. Roman concrete, on the other hand, seems to grow stronger over time. The recipe, lost to history for centuries, has become one of archaeology's most fascinating chemical mysteries. We know that the Romans called their concrete opus cementitium. It was made from volcanic ash, lime, seawater, and stone. But what no one understood was why it healed itself. When cracks formed, they didn't spread, they sealed. When seawater battered harbor walls, the material didn't erode, it became harder. In 2017, scientists studying Roman harbor samples under an electron microscope made a stunning discovery. Within the ancient mix were tiny mineral formations of altobermarite and philipsite, rare compounds that form under high heat. These crystals grew when seawater seeped into the cracks, triggering a chemical reaction that reinforced the material instead of destroying it. In other words, Roman concrete wasn't static, it was alive. But this revelation only deepened the mystery. How did the Romans discover such chemistry? The conditions to produce altobermarite require sustained heat, volcanic ash, and precise water ratios, conditions that modern builders can barely control in laboratories. Yet Roman engineers, without modern instruments, achieved this feat at scale. Some historians believe the discovery was accidental, born of experiment and experience. Others whisper it was inherited, knowledge handed down from older civilizations who understood the secret interactions of minerals and time. There are strange stories too, of masons who spoke of living stone, of builders who chanted over mixtures as if calling the material awake. Superstition? Maybe. But when you see those seawalls still resisting waves after 20 centuries, you wonder if they knew something we forgot. Modern researchers have tried to replicate the mix, adding volcanic ash from Pozzuoli, near Naples, the same site Romans used. The results are promising. New concrete mixed with this ash shows enhanced durability and even self-healing properties. But still, the perfect ratio eludes us. The Roman formula, if ever written, has been lost, perhaps burned in the fires that consumed the empire's libraries. Scholars still debate whether Rome's enduring structures are the product of deliberate chemistry or accidental genius. The more we learn, the more enigmatic it becomes. The Pantheon alone feels like a riddle in stone. Its dome, perfectly proportioned, grows lighter toward the top as the mixture changes composition, anticipating modern engineering principles by nearly 2 millennia. At its center, an oculus, an open eye to the heavens, lets in light and rain, which somehow do not compromise the structure. Rainwater drains invisibly through sloped floors, a design so elegant that even today's architects study it like scripture. It's easy to romanticize Roman mastery as lost magic. But perhaps the truth is more human, and more haunting. The Romans built not just for themselves but for eternity. They mixed time into their mortar, believing that what they built should outlive them. And it did. Walk through the ruins today, and the concrete still hums with permanence. It's not pristine, it's weathered, scarred, but alive in its endurance. Each wall whispers of human hands and volcanic earth, of ancient chemistry and divine ambition. We have satellites, skyscrapers, and self-healing polymers now, but still, we look back at Rome's forgotten recipe and wonder. In the end, it's not just about concrete. It's about legacy. They built with stone, but they dreamed in centuries. The stone spheres of Costa Rica, perfectly round megaliths scattered across jungles, purpose and method still unknown. Deep in the tangled jungles of the Diquis Delta in southern Costa Rica, under thick vines and the hum of insects, hundreds of enormous stone spheres lie half buried in earth. They range from the size of a baseball to massive orbs weighing over 16 tons, perfectly smooth and startlingly round. Their symmetry is so precise that even modern laser scans struggle to find deviation. And yet, they were carved over 1,500 years ago, by a civilization with no written language, no steel tools, and no wheels. The stones were first rediscovered in the 1930s when workers from the United Fruit Company cleared the jungle for banana plantations. As bulldozers tore through the earth, they struck smooth rock. Dozens of spheres emerged, some cracked, others untouched, each eerily deliberate. No one could explain them then. No one can fully explain them now. Made primarily of granodiorite and gabbro, the spheres were quarried from mountains miles away. The raw stone had to be shaped, transported through dense rainforest, and placed with astonishing accuracy. But how? The indigenous Diquis people, to whom these artifacts are attributed, left no clues. No tools, no workshops, no myths detailed enough to help us understand their origin. Archaeologists have proposed several theories. Perhaps they were status symbols, marking the power of tribal leaders. Some think they aligned with astronomical patterns, their placement corresponding to stars or solstices. Others argue they marked sacred pathways or boundaries between territories. But something about their perfection defies simple ritual. Even when eroded or cracked, the orbs maintain near-perfect geometry. Modern engineers have measured deviations of less than 2 millimeters, a feat difficult even with today's tools. To sculpt stone with such accuracy using only pounding stones and sand polishing would take extraordinary patience, or extraordinary knowledge. In one village, elders speak softly of the stones that sang. According to legend, the spheres once emitted tones when struck, harmonizing like bells. Some even claim they could roll themselves across the land when commanded by the gods. To scientists, such stories are myths, symbolic echoes of forgotten rituals. To others, they hint at something deeper, an ancient technology blending sound, vibration, and stone. Curiously, similar spherical stones exist across the world, in Bosnia, Scotland, Mexico, and New Zealand, each attributed to unrelated ancient cultures. Could this be coincidence, or evidence of shared lost knowledge, a global language of geometry carved in rock? Scholars still debate whether the Costa Rican spheres were the result of primitive craftsmanship or precise engineering guided by celestial understanding. In 2014, UNESCO recognized the Diquis spheres as a World Heritage Site, calling them a unique testimony to the social, economic, and political systems of pre-Columbian societies. But even UNESCO's reports end with unanswered questions. Why spheres? Why so perfect? Why here? Standing among them today feels otherworldly. The jungle hum fades, the air thickens with stillness. Each sphere seems to hum quietly in its silence, heavy yet alive, as if guarding an idea too old for language. There's something universal about the circle, a shape without beginning or end, sacred across civilizations. Maybe that's what they meant to express: eternity, balance, the cosmic order they saw in the sky above mirrored in the earth below. Or maybe, as some fringe researchers suggest, they were part of something grander, an ancient energy grid, harmonic markers in a forgotten system of planetary geometry. We may never know for sure. But the fact that they remain, round, silent, perfect, after centuries of rain, erosion, and human interference, feels like defiance. Defiance against time, ignorance, and decay. The people who made them are gone. Their names lost. Their cities erased. But their spheres remain, testaments to the idea that true mastery needs no words. The Saqqara bird, a small wooden carving that some claim is evidence of ancient knowledge of flight. In the quiet galleries of the Cairo Museum, among mummies, hieroglyphs, and relics of kings, lies a small wooden object that seems almost out of place. Barely 6 inches long, carved from sycamore wood and weathered with age, it resembles a bird, graceful, aerodynamic, and light. But look closer and you'll notice something uncanny: it has no feathers. No detailed markings. Its tail is upright and flat, like the vertical stabilizer of an airplane. This is the Saqqara bird, discovered in 1898 in a tomb at the necropolis of Saqqara, dating to around 200 BCE. To most archaeologists, it was simply a child's toy, a ceremonial carving, or a symbolic representation of the soul, the Ba, in Egyptian mythology. Yet, to others, it was something more. Because when you hold it in your hands, it feels like flight. In the 1960s, Egyptian archaeologist Dr. Khalil Messiha made the connection that would transform the humble carving into one of the strangest technological mysteries in history. He noticed that the model's proportions, wingspan, fuselage, and tailplane, matched the aerodynamic design of modern gliders. He even built replicas. When thrown, they soared. Could it be that the ancient Egyptians, over 2 millennia ago, understood the principles of aerodynamics? The idea seems absurd, yet the model's design defies coincidence. The tail isn't horizontal like a bird's, but vertical, serving as a rudder. The wings taper in a way that reduces drag. There are no ornamental details, no eyes or feathers, nothing that suggests it was meant purely as art. And on its body, carved faintly in hieroglyphs, one word appears: gift of Ammonius. If it was a toy, it was an astonishingly sophisticated one. Some have theorized it was part of a larger device, perhaps mounted on a mast to test wind currents or even part of a ritualistic weather gauge. Others go further, imagining it as a scale model for something greater, a blueprint for flight itself. In 2002, engineers at the University of Manchester recreated the Saqqara bird using modern tools. Their wind tunnel tests confirmed what Dr. Messiha had long claimed: the object was capable of generating lift. With the addition of a horizontal stabilizer, it flew with startling efficiency. Yet still, the skeptics remain. Mainstream Egyptologists argue the model's resemblance to an airplane is coincidence. They point out that flight, as we know it, requires more than symmetry. It requires motive force, materials, and understanding of physics far beyond anything evidenced in Egyptian records. To them, the bird is spiritual, not scientific, a metaphor for the human soul's freedom after death. And perhaps it is. But perhaps it's both, spirit and science intertwined. The Egyptians believed deeply in transcendence, in rising above the mortal world. Their art is filled with symbols of wings and motion, of journeys across the sky. Maybe the Saqqara bird was a physical manifestation of that dream, a tangible piece of the imagination's flight. Scholars still debate whether it was mere decoration or deliberate design. But something about its shape stirs a quiet sense of wonder. Because when we study it, we glimpse not just the Egyptians' skill, but their yearning. The same yearning that drove us, millennia later, to build airplanes, rockets, and machines that defy gravity. The desire to ascend, to see what the gods see. In that sense, the Saqqara bird is more than a relic. It's a prophecy carved in wood. And as it rests silently behind glass, wings spread as if ready to take off, we are reminded that maybe the dream of flight didn't begin in modern times at all. Maybe it was born in a tomb in Saqqara, in a civilization that believed death was only the beginning of the journey skyward. The Greek fire enigma, a mysterious weapon that burned even on water, its recipe guarded so well it died with its creators. In the chaos of war, fire is terror. But in the hands of the Byzantine Empire, fire became something far worse, a legend. They called it Greek fire, and it was said to burn hotter than any flame known to man, impossible to extinguish, even by the sea. It clung to wood, flesh, and water alike, roaring across waves like a living serpent. It was not merely a weapon, it was a miracle of chemistry wrapped in secrecy so deep that even now, 12 centuries later, no one truly knows what it was. The first recorded use of Greek fire was in 673 CE, during a naval battle between the Byzantines and the Arab fleet attacking Constantinople. As enemy ships closed in, Byzantine vessels unleashed torrents of flame through bronze tubes mounted on their prows. Witnesses described the scene as fire from the heavens, a liquid inferno that floated, spreading across the sea like oil, consuming everything in its path. The Arab chroniclers who survived the attack were so horrified that they called it the Sea of Fire, believing the Byzantines had harnessed divine wrath itself. Greek fire became the empire's most closely guarded secret, a weapon that turned hopeless battles into victories. Only a handful of families in Constantinople, the Kalinikoi, were said to know the formula. It was so valuable that it was treated like a state treasure, transmitted only from emperor to emperor in whispered confidence. Modern historians have tried to decode its composition, piecing together clues from ancient texts. Most agree it was a petroleum-based compound, possibly mixed with quicklime, resin, and sulfur. The reaction between these ingredients could ignite spontaneously on contact with water, explaining its terrifying persistence. Others suggest the addition of naphtha, an early form of crude oil, and even phosphorus, giving the weapon its supernatural glow. But no experiment has ever perfectly replicated its effects. The flames in historical accounts defy known chemistry. They burned underwater, curled against the wind, and could only be extinguished with vinegar, sand, or urine, an odd triad that sounds more like alchemy than science. Some fringe theories take this further, suggesting the Byzantines possessed an early form of pressurized flamethrower technology, centuries before modern warfare. Others believe Greek fire wasn't purely chemical but electrochemical, harnessing reactions that generated both heat and projection, an ancient prototype of modern incendiary systems. Yet the formula was never written down. When Constantinople finally fell in 1453, the secret vanished with it. The world's deadliest flame died in silence, its recipe swallowed by time. Scholars still debate whether Greek fire was a single compound or a system, a weapon combining chemistry, machinery, and strategy. What's certain is that it changed the course of history. Without it, Byzantium might have fallen centuries earlier, altering the entire trajectory of Europe. Today, scientists study fragments of ancient amphorae from shipwrecks, testing residues for hydrocarbon traces. Some show evidence of asphalt and resin. But even if we found the exact formula, something tells us it wouldn't feel the same. Greek fire wasn't just a mixture, it was mystique, mastery, and fear distilled into one. The Byzantines understood that power lies not only in invention but in secrecy. Knowledge hoarded becomes myth. If you stand on the shores of Istanbul today, looking toward the Bosporus where that first battle burned, the water still glows orange at dusk. The wind still whispers across the waves. And if you close your eyes, you can almost hear it, the hiss of pressurized flame, the scream of burning ships, the echo of a weapon so perfect it became a ghost. Greek fire reminds us that technology can be both salvation and damnation, a flame that, once lit, can never truly be extinguished. The Olmec colossal heads, giant stone faces carved with uncanny detail and possible tools unknown to pre-Columbian artisans. In the humid lowlands of Veracruz and Tabasco, Mexico, the jungle holds its breath. There, half buried under moss and tangled vines, the faces of giants stare silently through the centuries. They are the colossal heads of the Olmec civilization, massive basalt sculptures weighing up to 40 tons each, carved between 1200 and 400 BCE. Their expressions are serene, yet powerful. Their features, human yet monumental. Each head stands as if watching, remembering. The Olmecs are often called the mother culture of Mesoamerica, the ancestors of later civilizations like the Maya and Aztec. But unlike those societies, the Olmecs left no clear texts, no definitive explanation for their art or their technology. And so, the colossal heads remain their greatest enigma. Each sculpture was carved from solid basalt, quarried from the Sierra de los Tuxtlas Mountains, a site nearly 60 miles away from where the heads were found. Moving a 40-ton boulder that distance without wheels, draft animals, or metal tools seems almost impossible. Yet the Olmecs did it, again and again, with uncanny precision. The stone itself is dense and difficult to work. Even with modern steel chisels, shaping basalt is laborious. The Olmecs, it's believed, used handheld hammerstones made of harder rock like jadeite. But such methods should leave rough edges, uneven surfaces. Instead, the faces are smooth, symmetrical, even polished. One head wears what appears to be a helmet, another, a cap with detailed ear flares. Their features vary, some broad-nosed, others slender, leading to speculation that they might represent rulers, warriors, or deities. But one thing is clear, each was unique, carved with individual personality and intent. How did the Olmecs achieve such mastery without writing, metallurgy, or recorded blueprints? Some archaeologists propose ingenious solutions, teams of workers dragging stones on wooden sledges, lubricated with wet clay, moving inch by inch through the jungle. But the logistics stagger belief. Hundreds of men, weeks of labor, and absolute coordination, all without the wheel or beasts of burden. Fringe theories, of course, go further. Ancient astronaut enthusiasts claim the heads bear non-Mesoamerican features, perhaps African, perhaps something else, and suggest they depict visitors from distant lands. Others imagine lost technologies, sound-based carving, levitation, or forgotten machinery capable of manipulating stone with ease. But such ideas, though alluring, often overshadow the profound truth that ancient humans, with simple tools and immense determination, could achieve the extraordinary. Still, mysteries remain. Some heads show magnetic anomalies, patches where compasses deflect, suggesting localized magnetization. Whether by accident or design, it adds yet another layer of intrigue. And buried beneath some of the monuments, archaeologists have found offerings of jade, pottery, and iron oxide mirrors, as if the sculptures were living entities to be honored. Scholars still debate whether the colossal heads were religious icons, ancestral portraits, or markers of royal lineage. What is certain is that their creation required not only skill but organization, a society capable of mobilizing labor, artistry, and spiritual devotion. Standing before them, one feels watched. Their eyes, though uncarved, seem to see. Their lips, though motionless, seem on the verge of speech. The rain runs down their faces like tears, eroding stone but not memory. Perhaps that's their true function, to remind us that civilizations need not leave words to speak. Their message endures in stone: we were here. We dreamed. We shaped the earth itself. The Olmec heads are not only monuments of power but whispers of ingenuity. Proof that ancient hands could create technology not in circuits or gears, but in patience and geometry, in art so precise it transcends explanation. Even after 3 millennia, their silence is deafening. And in that silence, you can almost hear the rhythm of hammer on basalt, echoing across time, the heartbeat of a civilization whose technology was the human spirit itself. The Nazca lines, massive desert drawings visible only from the sky, their creation and meaning still a cosmic puzzle. In the parched plains of southern Peru, where the desert is as dry as bone and the horizon never ends, an ancient mystery stretches across the earth, lines, spirals, and figures carved into the very skin of the planet. These are the Nazca lines, a network of enormous geoglyphs etched into the desert floor sometime between 500 BCE and 500 CE. They cover nearly 200 square miles, and their designs, hummingbirds, spiders, monkeys, geometric shapes, can only be fully seen from the air. For over a century, they've fascinated scientists and storytellers alike. Because the question isn't just how they were made, but why. The lines were first brought to international attention in the 1920s, when pilots flying over the Nazca Desert noticed shapes that seemed too precise, too deliberate, to be natural. The dry climate had preserved them perfectly, the white limestone beneath the red sand reflecting light like a celestial map. Some of the lines stretch for miles in arrow straight paths that never waver. Others form intricate patterns that could only be planned with an understanding of scale that defies logic for a pre-industrial people. To make them, the Nazca people simply removed the reddish topsoil, exposing the lighter clay beneath. Simple, yes, but the execution was perfection. Even from today's perspective, replicating such vast precision without aerial guidance would be a monumental feat. Early archaeologists proposed that the lines were astronomical markers, perhaps a calendar aligning with solstices and star paths. The German mathematician Maria Reich, who dedicated her life to studying them, believed they were a massive observatory, tracking constellations across centuries. She mapped hundreds of lines, calculating alignments with stars like Sirius and constellations like Orion. But later studies complicated the theory. Not all lines matched celestial paths. Some pointed to mountains, others to water sources, sacred places in the desert where life depended on rain. The lines may have been ritual pathways, walked during ceremonies to honor gods of fertility and weather. Then there are the figures. The hummingbird, symbol of resurrection. The monkey, linked to the heavens. The spider, associated with rainfall. Together, they suggest a system of belief, a fusion of art, astronomy, and prayer etched into the earth itself. Yet the mystery remains. Why make something so vast that no human eye on the ground could ever fully see it? Some scholars suggest the answer lies in perspective. These were offerings meant for the gods above, not humans below. They weren't made to be seen, they were made to be received. Of course, not everyone stays within reason. Ancient astronaut theorists point to the line's size and visibility from above as evidence of contact with beings who could fly, extraterrestrial or otherwise. The so-called landing strip lines, perfectly flat and wide, have fueled decades of speculation. Could these have been runways? Messages? Coordinates? Mainstream archaeology dismisses such notions, but even the skeptics admit, the precision is haunting. Scholars still debate whether the Nazca lines were maps of the heavens, markers of sacred geography, or simply prayers carved into the earth. Each new study reveals more complexity, buried postholes suggesting ceremonial use, pigment traces implying ritual painting, even musical instruments found nearby that might have accompanied processions. What's undeniable is the devotion behind them. Creating a single figure would have taken weeks of coordinated labor, careful geometry, and constant maintenance. The fact that the Nazca people did this again and again, across centuries, tells us how deeply they believed that art could touch the divine. Today, as airplanes glide above those silent deserts, the figures still shimmer in the sun, massive, ancient whispers etched in stone and dust. From the sky, they look like messages across time. Maybe they are. Maybe the Nazca people were speaking not just to their gods, but to us, to future eyes that would finally rise high enough to see their world from above. And as we look down upon their creations, we realize something extraordinary. The lines weren't meant to be understood. They were meant to be felt, as proof that even in silence, humanity has always longed to leave its mark on the heavens. The Lycurgus cup, a Roman glass artifact that changes color depending on the light, hinting at nanotechnology 2 millennia old. In the hushed halls of the British Museum, under carefully controlled light, sits a cup that seems almost alive. It glows green when lit from the front, but when light shines through it, it turns a deep, blood red. It is called the Lycurgus cup, and it was crafted in 4th century CE Rome, a work of art so advanced that scientists only understood its secret in the 20th century. At first glance, it looks like a masterpiece of glasswork, delicate, intricate, depicting the myth of King Lycurgus entangled in vines, punished by the god Dionysus. But its strange behavior under light puzzled historians for centuries. Why did it change color so dramatically? The answer, when it came, was almost unbelievable. The glass contained nanoparticles of gold and silver. Somehow, Roman artisans, without microscopes, without electricity, without even the concept of atoms, had engineered nanotechnology. The cup's color-shifting effect arises from particles just 50 to 70 nanometers in size, suspended evenly within the glass. When light hits them, electrons oscillate, scattering wavelengths in different directions, green in reflected light, red in transmitted light. Modern scientists only began using this same principle in the 1980s, in fiber optics and biosensors. And yet the Romans did it with fire, sand, and alchemy. The Lycurgus cup isn't an isolated marvel, either. Other examples of dichroic glass from antiquity exist, but none so perfect, none so deliberate. Most are fragments, accidental byproducts of metal impurities. But the Lycurgus cup feels intentional, its effect so precise it could only have been deliberate. So how did they do it? One theory suggests Roman glassmakers mixed gold and silver dust into molten glass, not knowing they were creating nanoscale particles. Another claims they observed color changes in experimental alloys and learned to reproduce them by intuition. But no written record survives. No recipe, no manual. Just the object itself, flawless, enigmatic. And what was it for? The cup's imagery offers clues. It tells the story of King Lycurgus, who tried to kill Dionysus and was ensnared by living vines. In the glass, his body twists in agony, light playing across the vines like fire. Perhaps the changing color was symbolic, representing transformation, punishment, and divine justice. Or perhaps it served a more practical purpose, a drinking vessel for ceremonial feasts, glowing like magic by torchlight. Scholars still debate whether the Romans truly understood the microscopic science behind their creation, or if the effect was a stroke of luck born of artistic experimentation. But luck rarely produces perfection. Modern researchers have examined the cup using electron microscopes and discovered an even deeper sophistication. The nanoparticles are distributed with exact uniformity, suggesting deliberate control over temperature, timing, and cooling. Such precision is almost impossible without modern tools. Some fringe theorists see in this the fingerprint of a lost lineage, knowledge inherited from an earlier civilization whose understanding of materials surpassed our assumptions. Others believe it was the culmination of centuries of trial and error, artisans who worked not with equations, but with intuition so refined it bordered on the divine. Either way, the Lycurgus cup stands as proof that the ancients were not merely craftsmen, they were scientists in spirit, exploring the frontier between art and matter. Today, nanotechnologists study the cup not as an artifact, but as a teacher. Its structure informs modern experiments in plasmonics, how light interacts with nanoparticles. The same principles that once made this Roman glass glow now help design medical sensors, optical filters, and quantum devices. 2,000 years later, the Lycurgus cup still holds its magic. When light touches it, the old gods return, color shifting, story changing, myth reborn through science. It's not just an object from the past. It's a mirror, showing us that technology is not always invention, sometimes, it's rediscovery. And perhaps, like Lycurgus himself, we're still trapped in the vines of our own brilliance, unable to see how much our ancestors already knew. The Dendera Light reliefs, Egyptian carvings resembling modern bulbs, fueling debate over symbolic art or forgotten science. Deep beneath the sands of Egypt, in the Temple of Hathor at Dendera, a quiet chamber glows with mystery. Carved into its limestone walls, beneath the surface where priests once whispered invocations, are images that seem to defy their time. They show figures holding long, bulb-shaped objects, connected by cables to a base resembling a power source. Inside the bulbs, serpent-like shapes twist upward, encased within an oval casing that looks strikingly like glass. For the untrained eye, it's an elaborate piece of symbolism. But for some, it's something else entirely, a depiction of electric light, thousands of years before electricity was discovered. The carvings date back to the Ptolemaic period, around 100 BCE, yet they depict something that looks unsettlingly modern. Engineers who have examined the images point to their resemblance to Crookes tubes, early electrical discharge devices from the 19th century. The base of the carving, they argue, resembles an insulating stand. The snake, they say, could represent a filament or a plasma arc. Could the ancient Egyptians have known how to generate light? Traditional Egyptologists reject this idea completely. They interpret the reliefs as religious symbolism, not technological diagrams. The bulb shape, they argue, represents a lotus flower, the snake a rising sun, the symbol of creation emerging from chaos. The entire image, they say, is a mythological scene showing the god Harsamtus being born. But the question persists, why carve something that so perfectly mimics modern machinery? In 1990, a team of Austrian researchers from the Wien Museum built a working model of the Dendera Light. Using a simple glass bulb, an inert gas, and low-voltage current, they recreated the shape and glow of the relief, a pale, violet light that looked eerily similar to the carvings. The experiment didn't prove ancient electricity, but it showed the design was functional. And then, there's the architecture itself. The temple's corridors are narrow and unventilated, yet the carvings within show no evidence of soot or torch residue. No burn marks, no smoke stains. How did artists light their work in such tight, dark spaces without modern illumination? Scholars still debate whether the Dendera Light reliefs are coincidences of art or evidence of forgotten knowledge. Some argue they might represent spiritual light, the illumination of divine energy, captured in physical form. Others whisper of experiments lost to time, static electricity, charged minerals, or simple chemical luminescence mistaken for sacred power. Fringe theorists, as ever, go further. They connect Dendera to the Baghdad Battery, suggesting an ancient network of knowledge stretching from Mesopotamia to the Nile, a shared science of light, energy, and symbolism. But the evidence remains stubbornly ambiguous. To stand in the crypt of Dendera is to feel the strange hum of timeless curiosity. The air is cool, the silence deep, and the carvings seem to watch you as much as you study them. The light bulbs curve across the wall, gleaming faintly in torchlight, as though remembering something they once were. Were they mere symbols? Perhaps. But symbolism, in Egypt, was never mere. Every shape, every curve, carried layers of meaning, cosmic, spiritual, practical. Even if the Dendera reliefs depict myth, they still capture humanity's ancient fascination with illumination, the mastery of light in both physical and divine form. Maybe the Dendera lights weren't powered by electricity but by faith, the belief that understanding light was a way to understand life itself. Still, one can't help but wonder, if we see bulbs and wires where they saw gods and serpents, what does that say about us? Perhaps they were speaking in a language of light, one we've only begun to understand again. Because whether born of science or symbolism, the message is the same. They reached for light in the darkness. And so do we. The Sacsayhuaman fortress, stones so perfectly interlocked that no blade can fit between them, without mortar or machines. High in the thin air above Cusco, Peru, where clouds cling to the mountains and the wind hums through the stones, stands one of humanity's greatest enigmas, the fortress of Sacsayhuaman. From a distance, its walls look like natural cliffs, carved by the hands of time. But as you approach, you see the truth, not nature, but intention. Colossal blocks of limestone, some weighing over 300 tons, fit together with such precision that even a razor blade cannot slip between them. And yet, there is no mortar. No binding agent. Just stone, locked in perfect harmony. Built by the Inca civilization sometime in the 15th century, or, as some believe, upon the ruins of something far older, Sacsayhuaman crowns the hills overlooking Cusco like a crown of giants. The site's zigzagging walls stretch across the landscape in patterns that mirror lightning bolts or perhaps even the teeth of a puma, a sacred symbol in Andean cosmology. Each stone seems alive, shaped not just to fit its neighbors but to embrace them, curving, locking, flowing like liquid rock frozen mid-motion. How the Inca achieved such mastery remains one of archaeology's enduring puzzles. The official theory suggests brute force and ingenuity. The Incas, lacking iron or steel, supposedly shaped these blocks using stone hammers and abrasion, grinding one rock against another until both matched perfectly. To move them, they built earthen ramps and used ropes and levers, coordinating thousands of workers. It's a plausible explanation, but it strains under the sheer scale of the site. Some stones weigh more than modern cranes can lift. Some corners interlock at 6 or even 8 angles, fitting like puzzle pieces with millimetric precision. The complexity is not random, it's systematic. Every joint disperses pressure, making the walls earthquake-resistant, an engineering principle rediscovered only in modern times. When the Spanish arrived in the 16th century, they were awestruck. They called it the work of demons, convinced no human hands could have shaped such walls. Even today, local Quechua guides speak of Viracocha, the ancient god of creation, as the true builder, or perhaps an older race known simply as the ones before. In 2013, laser scans and geological surveys revealed something even stranger, tool marks that suggest the stones were softened, not just carved. The rock faces display textures resembling melted wax, as though the builders had somehow made the stones malleable, then molded them together before they hardened. No evidence of heat or fire has been found, so what process could achieve such an effect? Fringe theorists speculate about a lost Incan formula, a plant-based compound that could temporarily soften stone, allowing it to be shaped by hand. Locals still tell stories of liquid stone, a sacred mixture once used by priests and engineers to merge the earth with their will. Scientists have yet to find proof, but the legend refuses to fade. Scholars still debate whether Sacsayhuaman was built entirely by the Inca or by an earlier civilization whose knowledge they inherited. Radiocarbon dating of surrounding layers gives a wide range, suggesting multiple construction phases, perhaps over centuries, or longer. But whoever built it, they understood something profound: how to make permanence from imperfection. The stones are not identical, each one is unique, irregular. Yet together they form a whole stronger than any uniform wall. In that, there's a kind of wisdom, a reflection of the natural world, where harmony comes not from sameness, but from fit. Stand before Sacsayhuaman at sunset, and the stones glow gold. The air vibrates faintly, as though remembering the chants of builders long gone. It feels less like architecture and more like sculpture, a work of art carved from the bones of the earth itself. We may never know what tools shaped it, or what minds conceived it. But the fortress endures, immovable yet alive, proof that mastery isn't measured in machines, but in patience, purpose, and vision. And as the Andes breathe around it, whispering through centuries of mist, you can almost hear what the stones themselves might say. We do not move. But we remember. The Chinese Han Dynasty seismograph, a device said to detect distant earthquakes centuries before modern instruments. In the 2nd century CE, during the Han Dynasty, when Europe still wandered through its Iron Age and Rome was at its zenith, China quietly achieved something extraordinary. In the city of Luoyang, a scholar named Zhang Heng crafted a bronze vessel so mysterious that even today, engineers marvel at its ingenuity. He called it the Hofeng Didong Yi, the earthquake weather instrument, the world's first known seismograph. Built around 132 CE, the device was said to detect earthquakes occurring hundreds of miles away, long before the ground beneath it even trembled. For centuries, it was dismissed as legend, until Chinese historians uncovered detailed descriptions that left no doubt. Zhang Heng had invented a technology the world would not replicate for nearly 1,700 years. The instrument was large, a bronze urn nearly 6 feet tall, adorned with 8 dragons around its rim. Each dragon held a bronze ball in its mouth, facing a corresponding toad below. When an earthquake struck, one of the balls would fall, landing in the toad's mouth with a metallic clang, signaling the direction of the tremor's origin. What no one could explain, then or now, is how it worked. The device seemed almost alive, capable of sensing distant vibrations with astonishing accuracy. According to historical records, in its very first test, the seismograph dropped a ball facing the west. There had been no tremor felt in Luoyang, so the court dismissed it. But days later, a messenger arrived. An earthquake had devastated a province hundreds of miles to the west. Somehow, Zhang Heng's invention had known. For centuries, scholars debated the mechanism inside the sealed vessel. Some believed it used a pendulum, the same principle behind modern seismographs, that swung and triggered one of the dragon's mouths. Others thought it relied on liquid movement, with waves transmitting energy from one side to another. Whatever the method, the precision described in ancient texts was astonishing. The instrument was both scientific and symbolic. The dragons represented the 8 cardinal directions, while the toads symbolized the earth's receptivity, the harmony between heaven and ground, cosmos and man. In that sense, Zhang's creation was more than a machine, it was a philosophy made metal. Reconstructed models built in modern times, using descriptions from the Book of Later Han, have confirmed that the device could indeed detect directional motion, even subtle tremors. Its design demonstrates not only technical brilliance but a deep understanding of vibration, equilibrium, and material resonance. Yet there's something even more remarkable about Zhang Heng himself. He wasn't just an engineer, he was an astronomer, mathematician, cartographer, and poet. He built models of the heavens, charted lunar orbits, and created rotating celestial globes powered by flowing water, proto-mechanical computers in their own right. His seismograph was only one manifestation of a mind that saw patterns everywhere, in stars, in tides, in trembling earth. And yet, after his death, his knowledge faded. Later generations tried to replicate his work, but none matched the original sophistication. When the Han dynasty fell, the empire's vast archives burned, and Zhang's exact designs were lost. What remains is legend, and fragments of memory carved in bronze and ink. Scholars still debate whether Zhang Heng's seismograph was fully functional or partly symbolic, an allegory of cosmic balance rather than a literal tool. But modern replicas, when tested, have proven that it could indeed detect motion, not with digital sensors, but with pure mechanical grace. To imagine it is to stand at the threshold of science itself, a world where technology was both experiment and prayer, where every machine was built with reverence for the cosmos. In Zhang Heng's time, earthquakes were seen as messages from heaven, omens of imbalance between ruler and ruled. His invention, then, was not merely about measurement. It was about understanding, an attempt to hear the earth's voice before it screamed. In that sense, his bronze vessel was not just a seismograph. It was a conversation, between the planet and its people, between knowledge and mystery. And as modern instruments tremble with electronic precision, somewhere in that old silence, one can almost hear it still, the soft metallic chime of a dragon's ball falling into a toad's mouth, whispering that the world has shifted once again. The Piri-Reis map, a 16th-century chart showing Antarctica centuries before its official discovery, drawn with unknown precision. In 1513 CE, an Ottoman admiral named Piri-Reis unrolled a sheepskin parchment and changed the way history would forever view the ancient world. On it was a world map, hand-inked, colorful, and impossibly accurate. It showed the Atlantic coasts of Europe, Africa, and the Americas, and something else. A landmass at the bottom of the map that looked eerily like Antarctica, drawn not as a frozen wasteland but as a temperate, ice-free continent. No one in the 16th century should have known what lay beneath the South Pole's ice. Yet the Piri-Reis map depicted mountain ranges that wouldn't be officially discovered until 1958, when seismic surveys confirmed their existence beneath miles of ice. How could a map from the age of sail show details that even 20th-century technology required satellites to reveal? The map's creator, Admiral Ahmed Muhyiddin Piri, known as Piri-Reis, claimed he compiled it using 20 charts and 8 world maps, including some from Alexander the Great's time and one drawn by Columbus himself. It was a mosaic of inherited knowledge, a patchwork of sources from every corner of the known world. But one of those sources, it seems, carried information from a civilization that knew far more than it should have. Cartographers have marveled at the precision of its latitude and longitudinal proportions. The coastlines of South America curve correctly, the relative distances between Africa and Brazil are nearly perfect. Even more unsettling, the Antarctic landmass, if rotated and scaled, matches modern topographic outlines beneath the ice sheet. Mainstream historians caution restraint. They suggest that the Antarctic section might simply represent South America's southern extension, distorted by projection errors. Medieval mapmakers, after all, often filled blank spaces with imagination. Yet the geometric precision of the coastline is hard to dismiss as mere guesswork. In 1960, the U.S. Air Force commissioned cartographer Charles Hapgood to study the map. His conclusion shocked the academic world. The Piri-Reis map, he argued, was based on ancient charts created by an unknown civilization using advanced surveying methods, possibly from an era when parts of Antarctica were ice-free, over 6,000 years ago. He speculated that it recorded knowledge from an antediluvian world, passed down through Phoenicians, Greeks, and Arabs until it reached Piri-Reis. Hapgood's theory captured imaginations worldwide, endorsed even by Albert Einstein, who acknowledged that such precision implied a scientific culture unknown to us. Still, critics point out inconsistencies. The projection system used on the map would have required spherical trigonometry, centuries ahead of its time. Could this be coincidence, or had ancient navigators already mastered global geometry? Scholars still debate whether the Piri-Reis map represents lost ancient knowledge, early global exploration, or an extraordinary fluke of cartographic skill. But what makes it haunting isn't just what it shows, it's what it suggests. If these coasts were known before the ice, then someone, somewhere, mapped the Earth when the world was young. To stand before the surviving fragment in Istanbul's Topkapi Palace is to feel the weight of that possibility. The ink, still vivid in crimson and turquoise, snakes across the vellum like veins of time itself. Its script, half Arabic, half Portuguese, is a chorus of civilizations whispering across centuries. Perhaps Piri-Reis was not a pioneer but a messenger, his map a surviving echo of humanity's forgotten survey of the world. Or perhaps he was simply brilliant, assembling fragments of truth into a vision that only now we can appreciate. Either way, the parchment remains a paradox, part myth, part mathematics, all mystery. When we trace those inked coastlines with modern eyes, we're reminded that discovery doesn't always move forward. Sometimes, it circles back, revealing that the past may have charted the world long before we thought to look. The Long Yu Caves, vast underground chambers in China carved with flawless symmetry, and no record of their creation. In the rolling hills of Zhejiang Province, China, the earth conceals a secret so vast that even after its discovery, no one can fully explain it. In 1992, a farmer digging for a new fish pond struck stone, and kept striking it. When the water drained away, he found not a pond but a doorway. Behind it lay a cathedral carved from the rock itself, high ceilings, polished walls, and massive pillars supporting perfect geometric symmetry. This was the first of what would become known as the Long Yu Caves, one of the most baffling archaeological enigmas on Earth. To date, 24 of these subterranean chambers have been uncovered, each hand-chiseled into solid sandstone. The total excavated area exceeds 30,000 square meters, with ceilings up to 30 meters high. There are steps, columns, bridges, and halls, yet not a single piece of debris has ever been found. No tools, no sketches, no written accounts. Nothing. Who built them? Why? And how did they vanish from all record? Carbon dating of silt and mineral deposits suggests the caves are at least 2,000 years old, likely from the Qin or early Han dynasty, around the same time the Great Wall was being built. But while the wall required armies of laborers and left endless records, the Longyu caves seem to have been created in total secrecy. The interior walls are even stranger. Every surface is etched with uniform parallel lines, carved at perfect depth and spacing, covering ceilings, walls, and columns alike. The precision is hypnotic, the texture identical across vast distances, as if done by machine. Modern stonecutters have admitted that replicating this effect with today's equipment would be prohibitively time-consuming. So how did ancient builders do it, with only chisels and lamps in total darkness? There are theories, of course. Some archaeologists suggest the caves were quarries, their markings the result of extraction. But if so, where are the stones? The volume of rock removed from just one cave would fill dozens of pyramids. And yet, no trace of it has ever been found nearby. Others propose they were tombs or granaries, but no remains or artifacts support that idea. Some see the caves as ritual spaces, temples of sound or ceremony where acoustics mattered more than light. Indeed, the chambers hum when one speaks, the echoes form deep, resonant waves, as if the stone itself were alive. More speculative minds imagine the caves as ancient energy chambers, resonant structures built to channel Earth's natural frequencies. The repeating wall patterns, they argue, may not be decorative but functional, creating harmonic resonance within the rock. Scholars still debate whether the Longyu caves were products of a lost architectural tradition or something even older, preserved and repurposed by later dynasties. The sheer scale of labor required suggests tens of thousands of workers and decades of effort, yet not one historical document mentions them. The Chinese annals are among the most meticulous in human history, recording even small public works, and yet the Longyu caves are utterly absent. It's as if they were built, and then deliberately forgotten. Inside, the silence is almost oppressive. Visitors describe an overwhelming sense of order, geometry fused with reverence. Light flickers across the striated walls like ripples of thought, giving the illusion that the caves are breathing. Perhaps that's fitting. For all their stone solidity, they feel alive. Every culture has myths of civilizations that burrowed into the earth, the people beneath, the hidden kings, the architects of silence. Maybe the Longyu caves are the remains of such a people, those who worked not in sunlight, but in shadow, carving eternity beneath their feet. Or perhaps they're reminders of something simpler but no less haunting, that human ambition has always reached inward as well as upward, digging not just for shelter, but for meaning. To enter the Longyu caves is to stand in a cathedral of stone where no prayers remain, only the echo of chisels, the breath of forgotten hands, and the hum of a mystery carved deep into the bones of the earth. The Nebra Sky Disk, a bronze artifact combining art, astronomy, and math that predates most recorded celestial knowledge. In the forests of Saxony-Anhalt, Germany, where mist curls through the trees and the ground still whispers of the Bronze Age, two treasure hunters made a discovery that would rewrite humanity's understanding of the stars. It was the year 1999, and beneath the roots of a hill called Middleburg, they unearthed a circular bronze plate, tarnished green and inlaid with gold. At first glance, it looked like a ritual shield or decorative disc. But when light touched its surface, it came alive: stars, a crescent moon, a radiant sun, and a sweeping arc across the heavens. This was the Nebra Sky Disk, the world's oldest known cosmic map, forged around 1600 BCE, at least 1,000 years before the Babylonians formally recorded celestial observations. Just 12 inches across, yet infinite in implication, the disk blends art, astronomy, and mathematics in ways no one thought possible for prehistoric Europe. Its gold inlays represent celestial bodies arranged with astonishing precision. The cluster of 7 dots corresponds to the Pleiades, the Seven Sisters star group, visible to the naked eye only under clear conditions. The crescent shows a waxing moon, the circle a solar symbol. And those 2 golden arcs at the edge. They perfectly mark the angle between sunrise and sunset on the summer and winter solstices, a 82-degree span visible only from the latitude of central Germany. How could Bronze Age people have known such things? When researchers from the State Museum of Prehistory in Halle studied the disk, they realized it wasn't merely decorative, it was a tool, a device for aligning ritual calendars with the solar and lunar cycles. By observing the Pleiades and Moon together, the ancient sky watchers could predict the right time to plant and harvest, ensuring survival. The disk was both scientific instrument and spiritual relic, blending knowledge with reverence. But the story deepened, and darkened, when forensic analysis revealed something strange. The Nebra Sky Disk wasn't found in isolation. Alongside it were Bronze Age swords, axes, and bracelets, all intentionally buried, perhaps as an offering. The disk had been handled, modified, and even repaired over centuries, suggesting generations treated it as sacred. And yet, when first discovered, it was sold illegally on the black market, nearly lost to history again. It took a sting operation by German police in 2002 to recover it, a poetic echo of how fragile human knowledge can be, always at risk of vanishing into the shadows. Still, even after decades of study, questions remain. The composition of the gold and bronze shows trade links spanning thousands of miles, from Cornwall's tin mines to the Balkans' copper. Whoever made it commanded not only astronomical insight but global connections. Scholars still debate whether the Nebra Sky Disk represents local genius or knowledge inherited from older, forgotten civilizations, perhaps even from the mysterious megalithic astronomers who built Stonehenge. The parallels are striking, both sites align with solstices, both merge earth and sky, and both speak in symbols instead of words. And yet, there's a haunting poetry to the Nebra disk that sets it apart. It doesn't just map the heavens, it interprets them. It turns the vast, cold machinery of the cosmos into something human, intimate, and beautiful. Its maker didn't just observe the stars, they conversed with them. When the disk was finally displayed to the public, standing under its faint museum lighting, people described feeling something primal stir within them, as if gazing upon the first mirror ever made for the night sky. The Nebra Sky Disk reminds us that our ancestors weren't primitive stargazers fumbling in the dark. They were thinkers, dreamers, scientists in spirit. They sought to understand their place in the universe long before telescopes or equations. And maybe that's why it still moves us, because deep down, we share their same longing. The disk may be 3,600 years old, but its meaning is timeless. To know the heavens is to know ourselves. Somewhere in that bronze-green glow, you can still see the hands of a forgotten astronomer, laying gold stars into metal, whispering to eternity. Now we will not forget the sky. Conclusion. The ancient world, for all its ruins and relics, was never truly primitive. Each of these mysteries, from the Baghdad Battery to the Nebra Sky Disk, stands as proof that knowledge is not linear. It flickers, it fades, and it returns, each time reminding us that our ancestors were not behind us, but beside us, walking the same path of wonder. They built with stone, bronze, and belief, but their blueprints were written in curiosity. And though time has buried their names, it has not silenced their questions. Perhaps that's the greatest mystery of all. That every answer we seek in the past is a reflection of our own future. A future they already glimpsed, in sparks of fire, in patterns of stars, in whispers of light beneath the earth.